Live action Lion King remake gets a prequel slash sequel in this new story, but is its originality worth its time? Welcome Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you seen Mufasa The Lion King? Is it good? Is it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to decide if you're going to see it or not, make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole and getting right into the synopsis. In this storytelling sequel of The Lion King, we get Rafiki telling us of all the past and how the formation of Mufasa has come to life in what we get for The Lion King. Taking it into a positive, like the first, if you love the CGI, the animation effects that really pull this off, this is something that really hones in on its own craft, manages to look super realistic with the nature of making lions look like lions, giving them emotional guides with the way they are able to speak, the flow of the story, the animation, and everything pulls off something that's really great. The camera motion, everything that tracks along, gives you many different viewpoints that goes upon this grand scale, this big scope of this arena. Everything that's going on throughout makes it look like it's actually filmed in a realistic setting, not documentary style, but still in this storytelling element that will be great for families, great for kids that just enjoy this sort of juvenile sense of imagination, being able to follow along these lines on this journey as they recapture some of the tale as it's a sequel, because the way the storytelling is going about, you get Rafiki, Kiara as this child of Simba, and everything that flows on throughout. You're not getting much of a sequel, but you're obviously basing this mostly as a prequel, and so there's jokes and little quirks here and there that can work, or just depending on what sort of flavor of humor you are into. And there's things about the prequel that follows about in this storytelling sense that can be going about this original sense of imagination because you haven't seen it before, and so just things that may pick up the pieces here and there, show how different things come to life, how different characters come to meet up with one another, just goes about its own way of creating this atmosphere that is good for the nature of being able to have a good voice cast, have Barry Jenkins as a great director, pulling this all together in a way that is a great picture. And taking it right into mixed elements, I feel some moments of the journey can feel a little bit generic in the locations, other things that go about along the way, certain things come about in certain ways that just don't necessarily bring up a sense of danger or something where you totally can't predict what's all going to come about, because this is a prequel, so it comes about the fate of not necessarily building upon something that's completely original. Certain things may come about to reveal the mysteries of how the pieces have come together in order to get the Lion King movie we know today. And so unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily always have the stakes. You create this sense of endangerment that Mufasa could die, but we all know he's not going to die. So it's a false sense that unless you have some reason not watch any of the Lion King movies, there's certain things that come about that try and set you up for a sense of fear of what's all going to happen, but it's utilizing the characters or locations that we already know make it through this. And so that's where it unfortunately can create a sense of falsity to what's all building up. Doesn't necessarily ruin the story, but it's something that as a prequel creates this false sense of what's all going about along the way. And there's elements here and there with the animation, other things that go about that isn't super creative, or when you're going into the songs, you're getting this whole new list of songs that can be good for the nature of what it's doing with its soundtrack. We're getting Lin-Manuel Miranda as the writer, or for most of these songs, creating this great vibrant motion music to what's all going on with the story. But my problem with the songs and certain things that go about, while they can be good, they can be catchy, it can be turned off to the nature that they're feeling very plot based, and they don't necessarily have as much thematic magic that the original themes or the songs have to the nature of what's all building on with those. There's different things that make this a musical much so more than the original. So what that all bases up off of, you're expecting some of the music, but when the characters suddenly break up into song and it doesn't necessarily always interfere with what's going on screen, normally the songs are meant to be them speaking and everyone around hears, but there's a point in the movie where there's villains and they're meant to be hiding, but they still break up into song, and it doesn't interfere with the nature of what's going on with the consistency, whether everyone hears, or if it's supposed to be close encountered with the nature of what's all going about. So just little tidbits here and there, things that don't always feel consistent, and also some parts of the song that just feel more plot oriented than anything, than something you would be singing and being able to sing on a daily basis about in a way that doesn't click quite as well. So going into the negatives, unfortunately, there's many parts of the film that just didn't quite work, of course. There's, of course, the moments where when they break up into song, or some of the elements with the animation, it just doesn't always work to the natural longevity of what you're doing. These photorealistic lions being able to speak, being able to do all these things, they don't quite emote quite as properly as what you would expect for something that's sort of animated, even creating these other super realistic lions. And unfortunately, you don't always get all the emotions unless you super exaggerate what the down look is for being sad, other things that can work for this film throughout the way. But unfortunately, here and there, there's just moments that just don't have as much sense of brevity, and some of that's just within it being a prequel. You don't sense the danger quite as much. You always know what's going on, what's happening. But that also leads into certain cliches, certain contrivances, and rushed moments where at the beginning you have Mufasa who gets separated from his parents, and that leads into parts of the story that just rush along the way where you don't necessarily get the sense of attachment of what's all going on. The story rushes forward even before you can begin to grasp the idea that Mufasa has been separated from his parents. Just rushing along with the story, certain things come about, and Mufasa essentially gets superpowers within this one. Yes, you're hearing that correctly, of certain things about the hunting and everything that's going about, and other things that I won't spoil for the purpose of this review, but they're more so just superpowers that makes it super convenient for certain plot points to come along. And there's certain things along the journey where you're getting these different strays that happen to come together in order to come on this journey, order to get to Meleilei. That's the main journey that's going along with this story plot with Mufasa's side of thing, that just doesn't work quite as magically as I would have liked. It feels like they just so happen to run into each other in ways that happens because it needs to happen for the purpose of the story. Things coming along that happen to work along the magic that goes about. And there are certain things where the thematic ideas, the different genres that they try and mix together, doesn't feel as clever as they would have liked it. The romance between Scar and what's all going on with Sarabi and Mufasa as well goes about in a sort of juvenile way that doesn't always feel like it's quite working for the sense of Disney magic that could work for adults as well. Certain things that just feel contrived due to the nature of how the plot goes along. The journey feels just not necessarily as colorful or as extravagant as it ought to be. While there's moments and things with the directing, the cinematic appeal to it feels great, unfortunately there's just moments that just don't always have the way to cleverly craft something that makes sense, feels original, feels clever to the nature of what it's all building up, creating these characters that you care about and love, knowing that they are going to become part of The Lion King. And so everything almost feels forced in the way that comes about, which also brings me to talk about the points where they create all these things where you know things are going to come about in order to create the setting of The Lion King, but it also does that in a way that it's way too far on the nose, touching on the way Rafiki gets his staff, touching on the way Pride Rock gets created, and building upon all these different things where, yes, they can work in some instances, but at the same time, it almost becomes too evident to where when you go back and forth in some points with the storytelling aspect as a sequel, telling Kiara of the story, there's also moments where it's just too much for the nature of they're trying to guess who Taka becomes, and it's keep going with that plot, talking who could Taka possibly be, and it's obviously Scar. And they just overlook that as a nature of almost being super childish by the humor that's all going about. And so that just goes into a certain sour note here and there. And of course, other songs just, while they're based on the plots, how they're all overlaying each other, that can be good for being songs. They have good dialogue or good lyrics. There are certain things where I don't know how Lin-Manuel Miranda was influenced with the storytelling in order to create these songs, but there's some that just don't do much for the story or felt cringe to the nature of what was all going on screen. You have this main great villain that's the toughest, and he gets a song called Bye Bye, and the way that that punchline comes off, the way he keeps singing it on, and then also it being brought up as a bye bye later on when he faces on Mufasa, is just ridiculous to what is all going on, to the nature of what is based on the plot alone. The story itself, yes, it can be good for the families. Yes, the people that enjoy the original Lion King remake may enjoy this because there is a cinematic appeal that I still personally enjoy even, but unfortunately, there's just so many missteps, so many contrivances that say this is a prequel. Somehow we have to get all these strays together by the end, get them to Meleilei. I don't know if Mufasa is going to become the Lion King by the end, but there's still much more clever ways about going about this story than what we unfortunately have received with this journey. So that's just my personal thoughts on Mufasa The Lion King, which I have to rate a simply 4 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Mufasa The Lion King. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Or is it somewhere right in the middle? Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.